everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. This is the biggest crowd we've had since the pandemic started. So this is the biggest crowd in 18 months for sure. We always appreciate public comment. I do want to just preliminarily state that this is a pretty substantial board agenda tonight, and that the board does try to do its best to incorporate public comment on every agenda item as we go along. We do it in a pretty informal way. So if there's something where you would like to be heard, just please raise your hand. Generally, this would be a good time to do it kind of after the board's had a little bit of questions to ask or answered, and then we can have some public comment. But I'm sure tonight we're all a little bit mindful of each other's time, so we'll try and keep things efficient if we can. And then there's also a dedicated spot at number 4 for public comment and participation for anything you don't see on the agenda. So with that said, is there a motion regarding the agenda that was posted?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion from Mr. Lyman and a second from Mr. Coolidge is to adopt the agenda as it was posted. Any changes to be made?
Yeah, I'd like to add an executive session
Mr. Giles, yep.
to discuss the police union grievance. I think it comes under VSA 313A1, and you'd like to have 2 motions?
Right, we'll have 2 motions.
Yeah, the first motion is to find that premature general public knowledge would put us at a disadvantage.
Sorry.
We'll look at that later.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry,
We'll do this at 13B.
yeah.
Okay.
Perhaps, yeah.
Okay.
Any other changes to be made? If not, all in favor of the agenda as it's just been amended, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. It's unanimous. Item 2, approval of the minutes of September 13th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Sorry.
Motion and a second. Any errors or omissions in the minutes as they were prepared? None heard. All in favor of adoption of the minutes as they were prepared, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions?
Aye.
I'll abstain too. So we'll go 3-0-2. Item 3, the town manager's report. Mr. Atherton, please.
That's my report for September 13th and 24th. Sent letters out to Newton Road residents inviting them to apply for the new round of property buyouts. I have received actually 3 responses so far, so 1 more since I wrote this. This one should be moving forward rather quick. Like it's a 2.5 page application, which is kind of nice. So we'll see how that works. Hopefully more folks will come in. I've been working with Devin Neary at the RPC on an application for another V-Trans Transportation Alternatives Program grant to replace a section of sidewalk on Carver Street from the Segment 6 project line to Rossiter Street on both sides of the road. So we just actually did some cost estimates today, and we'll be, probably in the next meeting, we'll have a letter for you guys to sign and move forward with it. Attended the RPC Commissioners meeting on the 13th. It wasn't all that eventful. It was mostly budget stuff, which we all talk about too much in the next few months. So, met with Heather Stradzinski from NeighborWorks to discuss what they can offer to Brandon residents for weatherization and energy efficiency programs and funding. Representative Jerome and Jack Schneider also attended with me. It was productive. We took some driving around town. I looked at some things that they could do for us. I actually had a gentleman that came in the office as we were getting ready to leave, who I found out at the field hockey game this weekend actually signed up for the Heat Squad, so he's pretty excited, but I did find out they're almost a year out again already, so, but he was excited about that. So, rec news, Mr. Moore's telling us that Gamer Gathering is a new Brandon Rec offering being held on Wednesdays at 4:30 in the Town Hall downstairs meeting space. Leader Harmony Van Eaton supervises this electronic gaming meetup for kids ages 10 to 17. Harvest Fest is back on October 3rd at Estabrook Park. It will be playing host to a petting zoo, food vendors, hay wagon ride, and the misnamed yet immensely popular Leaf People. Building from 1 to 4. This is a community gathering that is organized by Brandon Rec with help from the Brandon Area Toy Project and the Chamber of Commerce and PTO. Our second annual Estabrook Fall Craft Fair will be held from 10 to 3 on Saturday, October 9th. Over 90 vendors are signed up, and organizer Karen Trey donates proceeds to the Brandon Dog Park. Quiz night is back. Brandon Rec and the Library Collaboration's 4th year of Pub Trivia Fun begins on Sunday, October 16th. Visit the new BrandonPublicLibrary.org website to sign up your team. And lastly, watch out for future offerings including, but not limited to, fall kickball, youth cross-country running, and Sunday crafting club.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. Any questions of Mr. Atherton from the board?
I noticed you wrote on here that you and Bill met with Consolidated Communications.
Oh, did I miss that one?
It was behind the Neighborhood Worksman.
Oh, I was so excited about neighborhoods.
Yeah, and so I was just wondering when you're thinking you might be getting that quote, or if there's any
Oh,
update.
I did miss that. So actually, we've been trading emails back and forth again, and they had a bunch of questions for us. You know, Bill was answering them for them, so we should see something here real soon.
Great. And I have one other thing. I talked with you briefly before the meeting. We received an email from Wade Davis, and I thought for the benefit of the public hearing your response, just about the traffic light again. Wade sent us a picture of the traffic backed up in the southgoing lane. And he's wondering if, he asked specifically about blinking yellow. And I thought the way I formed the question to you is, I'm just curious what kind of control you have over the lights, or whether or not you basically have to get a traffic engineer to write a new program.
I have no control over them. That we would definitely have to hire a company to do any more studies or set timings and everything. I did speak, I think I told you guys last time, I did speak with Dave Monroe at Houston O'Neill to see if we could come up and just look at things, but no matter what we do, someone's not going to be happy on some road somewhere. So just throwing that out there that we can do another study and see what it brings, but ultimately it's going to, I guess, be up to the town and how they want them set up.
Anything else?
No, I guess the part that's interesting about that is when you say it's up to the town to decide how they want them set up. I think it's an excellent point, and I'm just wondering if there's any, kind of rational input we could give to a traffic engineer, saying we'd like, for example, the southgoing traffic to have a longer green, for example. Because that seems to be the sticking point right now, is that southgoing stuff always has to wait because Carver Street stuff there.
Well, so probably right now, if you go out there, the lights are green going down, Saturday north and south. Those lights only trigger when there's traffic coming off of Union Street, Carver Street, Park Street, or for pedestrian. One thing I've been noticing is the last time we brought it up, there's a bunch of other variables that are at play right now too. Or one is folks trying to turn into Lot A coming from the southbound, which totally screws everybody up. We have pedestrians in a crosswalk right out here. We have pedestrians by Kennedy Park and Green Park. Lots of traffic backing in and out. I mean, if any of you guys, I'm sure, have noticed that Wednesdays through Saturdays are crazy busy downtown now. So there's definitely more traffic on Route 7. I mean, I sit right on top of it all day. There's a lot of truck traffic. So there are some times where it backs up, but it's really 4 minutes, even if they're down beyond here, they're clear. So
Yeah, I was surprised when I came through just a couple of days ago coming home that I waited 3 light cycles to get to Carver Street, coming from Middlebury. And I guess that was my only curiosity, is if we do have the ability to change them, to be able to change that green light southbound to allow it to empty before it goes back to a regular cycle kind of thing.
So remember when they were first set up, that was actually staying greener longer, and the side roads were backing up more.
Okay.
So it's
a trade-off.
what do you do here? Like, we're always going to have traffic. We had not an ideal situation before the traffic lights, where Carver and Union definitely was having a difficult time getting out in traffic. So I guess it's, we can bring that to just the folks that are doing the studies, or even the folks that are turning the knobs, to program something else. It will come at a cost, but we certainly can look into it.
I'm wondering if it's worth just trying, because enough people have mentioned the southbound problem to where if it was as easy as trying it for a month or something, or even a couple of weeks, it might make sense. I mean, are there other thoughts on it?
I have a suggestion, it's just that maybe that, like on, I think Friday evenings, it tends to back up, and Saturday mornings when there's people coming into town. So maybe the thing, if there'd be key times where the south and northbound have more time to clear the intersection, and us on the side streets would just have to wait, like another minute or so.
Make it time of week or time of day?
I think it's the time of day, because it's not like that all the time. But I noticed it on Friday evening, so.
I think that was discussed early on with trying to do things like that, and then they came to that if there's no traffic on the side roads, the cars are flowing. So, like at night, it's gonna be green until a car shows up, so.
Okay.
We can, I've reached out to them already, I've talked to Dubois and King and Chris O'Neill on it, and it's just a matter of time to get someone up here to look at it again.
Thanks.
Mr. Carr?
I find this somewhat amusing because for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, when we were discussing this whole process, the big concern is what we were going to be turning Route 7 into a racetrack because we took that 90-degree turn out of there. And people were speeding through the middle of town. Now they're complaining because they're not speeding through the middle of town. I understand the irritation factor, having to wait maybe 3 lights to get through it. Even that is a limited amount of time during and that is our rush hour. If you were in New York City, you'd be dealing with the same thing, but a lot worse if you're in Washington Beltway. If they increase the amount of time for the greening on that south, you have 2 major chains, Hannaford's, 2 national chains, Hannaford's and Walgreens, emptying out on that road, their parking lots. You'd have cars back down Union Street, cars not able to get out of the parking lot. I think that's probably why they had to do it the way they did, is my assumption.
Okay.
I know Butch Shaw, that's what he did for a living. And maybe he'd be willing to come up and sit for a couple hours and see the way things work and have some suggestions to try to tweak it a little bit, but I'm happy that we are so busy in this town Wednesday through Saturday that people have to wait at the lights because that means you have pedestrians queuing the lights, which also affects where everybody can and can't get on the roads. So it's kind of a good problem to have, is the way I've always seen it. And I'm happy to have it tweaked, but that's kind of the way I feel about it.
So, again, we did, like early on, it was set up where Union Street especially was backing up, and folks were having a hard time getting out of the Walgreens and the Hannaford's parking areas to get into traffic. So that was when the first adjustment was made. I know that was the big factor there, so.
Thanks.
Other questions of the board from Mr. Atherton? Questions from the public for the town manager? Robert Black.
Just a quick comment to follow Mr. Carr's comment. I do agree with that. I understand there's an efficiency to traffic flow and stuff, but you're going to hear later tonight more about the greenways issue and the whole idea of walkable downtown, right? And so I think deference to the pedestrian over the car in this case would be okay. Brandon's taglines are unhurried, unspoiled, and will be certainly unforgettable if we get back in the cars. But I really support that idea to keep us walkable and safe for, there's more mothers with strollers and people with dogs and stuff like that. So I just say that I think it's okay that the cars have to slow down.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the input. Others? Other questions for the town manager or comment on this matter or other things in his report? If not, we'll come back to public comment each time. So item 4 is public comment participation. It's actually also other items not on the agenda. Does the board have any items not on the agenda they want to bring up? Any members of the public with items that don't appear on the agenda that they would like to address?
Yeah, Jim Emerson, I just have a quick update on Solar Fest. They're quite intent on coming to Brandon, and they've been having board meetings and search meetings. This is a draft of a item we wish we can put into the front porch forum tomorrow. And just wanted to be aware of it and ask for your input. I need to add a few email addresses at the bottom, but you can get back to me another time. I'm not having to jam through it right now, but I just wanted to give you that update here. Most interested in, of course, the state property that we've shown them, but there's a number of other properties that we're exploring, that some are on the market, some aren't, and we're open to suggestions on landowners to contact who might have 20, 30 acres of open land. And so I'll welcome your feedback if you have any.
Great to open up the field to folks who might have such a thing or know of such a place. I think that's super outreach. Thank you for considering that step. I don't have any problem with what they've written.
That's good.
No.
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Mr. Town Manager,
actually
do you
have
see liability issues?
not on this one.
Good.
I did have a conversation with Michael Bailey from Solarfest today. He'd actually left me a message this morning. Had a nice conversation with him about this, the state lot, and he had asked if he could inquire about it with the state, and, we talked a little bit and, kind of decided that it'd be better if we sort of step aside and let them try to work a deal out with the state instead of us, so, he's gonna move forward with that and just keep us in the loop. It probably
Are
would
you
work out.
comfortable that way?
I'm very comfortable with
Yeah,
that. I
that's
don't have to
fine.
get into a lease, sublease type agreement or whatever, and, they can work it directly with them, so.
Did you catch that, Jim?
Yes,
You're
yes,
aware of
thank you.
that discussion?
I was not aware.
Yep. That's a great update, thank you. Other members of the public with items? Yes, Ally Walter.
Allie Walter, question for Dave. Is there an update on the paving of the parking lot behind what will be the Dunkin' Donuts? Because we really could use more parking downtown on the weekends now, with having people
It's
having
being
problems
constructed
parking.
right now, and we
Okay.
should have, we're at the mercy of the pavers. If they, like today, the rain doesn't help, so, they're scheduled to come next week, actually, and start doing town paving. I don't know what day the parking lot's gonna be done, but that's in there. So it's not, we're not paving it, the contractor is, so whatever arrangements they've worked out with them, but they'll be here. They'll be done before mid-October is the plan.
Part two, I was sort of related to downtown traffic, especially now we're having more events, as Bright Clover is having the beer gardens and the tents, and we're doing music for GBA. I was driving through Whitehall last weekend, and they have a sign saying no engine brakes in the historic downtown area. Has that ever been considered for branding? Because it gets pretty noisy during the weekdays, and have the store door open. It's sometimes hard to hear people talking over the engine brakes.
The board just recently had someone else suggest that very thing to us. They sent it along to the town. It was Sue Weber, that's who it was.
We had conversations about that a few years back with the chief of police, that the signs sometimes create more harm than good. So we can revisit it again. Well, there's no law against it. We'd have to create an ordinance for it that they would have, that MPD would have to write a ticket on, just putting a sign up. From what Chief Burkell was telling us, that it's usually more of a, let's see how loud we can get it now that it says that we shouldn't use it. So it would have to be an ordinance related thing in order for us to ticket somebody on
Is there a particular, spot in the downtown where you,
It's like, oh, Whitehall, New York can do this. It seems like, why wouldn't Brandon be able to put, they have like a sign on either side of the downtown. Maybe it makes truck drivers,
that. They probably have an ordinance. That would be
it's not
my
like ticketing,
guess.
and that's gonna be impossible,
Yeah.
like chase them down to this truck, that seems insane. That's not gonna work, that's not practical, I don't think. But I think we have a sign on either side, so some truck drivers, I think would probably, especially for the Smith block, apartment people, you would think, as the downtown develops, it might be something to keep reconsidering as something that might be good, if it maybe doesn't help though.
There is towns in the state that have, they don't have, I don't know if they have an ordinance, because it says, please do not use engine brakes. or
Yeah.
Just a suggestion, and I think that would probably be a better way to go,
I agree.
rather than creating an ordinance that, like I said, I know there's several towns throughout the state that do have, but you know, they do have, please do not use engine brakes.
I like that idea, and if it were, I think it would make sense to start as far back as the fire station, because that
Yeah, I think
downhill
like-
stretch
I think we'd have to start it, yes, up by the Legion.
up by the Legion.
The residential area.
Used to be signs,
I think, I thought there was at one point in
I
time.
thought there was before.
Did there used to be?
Or there was discussion, I know, several years ago about putting it up, and there was a lot of, and at that point in time, I remember it being a heated discussion. It just, and I think, and Bernie, maybe you have some input on it, years ago when that came out, but, you know, that was, like I said, driving across the state, you just noticed that, rather than having it as an ordinance, it was just a suggestion.
I like the idea of the suggestion. I wouldn't be for an ordinance, but I like the suggestion.
Bernie?
I just have a question, probably Mike and maybe Brian and Tracy's, is the drive truck. Why would you need one in the middle of a town that has 2 stoplights in it?
When you're weighing in at 70,000 pounds, an engine brake is a safety
That was,
issue on the truck, because it does slow the truck.
Yeah, my point though is, if they're coming through the middle of the town going hopefully 20 to 25 miles an hour, I wouldn't think they would probably need it, so.
Well, but coming up the hill by the fire station, when they're doing like 50, and then they have to slow down to 35, coming down that hill, I mean, I hear them engine braking a lot.
Sure, but, they, like you said, you'd have to stop and wait above that hill then, but to get them to,
yeah, and like Mike said, you know, you take some of these trucks that are weighing upwards of 100,000 pounds. The worst part was, the worst part for any place in town for an engine brake is coming north on 7. South, it isn't.
yeah. I've heard a lot of engine brakes in front of the shop. And I've seen trucks going pretty darn fast in the middle of town, because 25 even through the middle of town is too fast.
Absolutely.
Too fast, and that's the speed limit.
And
They don't touch
in a
it.
large truck, even if it's going 25, a lot of times it seems like it's going faster.
Yeah.
And then there's such a big mass moving down the road. And like I said, I mean, if you're weighing in at 70,000 pounds, then that engine brake is a safety mechanism for the trucks, used properly.
There's definitely a lot of guys out there that misuse purposely. Cutouts and, yeah, it's all.
I grew up right across from Funeral on Route 7, and I don't remember engine brakes being an issue at all, ever.
Well, I live in a house behind yours, and I can hear, when I'm out in the barn, I can hear them coming down from.
I moved out in 1978.
Yeah. But, you know, I like the idea of a sign, you know, suggestion. Because most people are going to see that. Probably 90% of people will abide by it. Once they see it, you know, that probably the first couple times
You're gonna have that certain
Right.
few that are gonna come through here on a regular basis that are, as you would anything, that are just, I'm using my engine brake.
Yeah.
There's,
I like
have
Tracy's
that.
idea.
Even if it was an ordinance, you're gonna have that.
I like Tracy's idea of just saying, please.
Right.
Use your engine brakes in the middle of the
I'm
village.
sure there's wording that can be on a sign to
Right.
have it go through the ordinance.
Yeah.
I'm sure the verbiage of it.
Well, the only reason you would do an ordinance is you'd have a sign up without an ordinance that you can't enforce.
Right.
So if you want to enforce the engine brakes, you need to have an ordinance so PD can actually write someone a ticket for it. But if you want to do it just as a feel-good approach, then,
Yeah.
I mean, no one can do anything about it. We just hope that some people don't use them, but that's the difference. So,
What's the pleasure of the board?
I'd make a motion that we put up a suggestive sign without an ordinance to see if it helps a little bit.
Second. Motion by Mr. Giles and a second by Mr. Wyman to put up a suggestive sign, which I think is probably the wrong word. But a
Please don't say the word suggest.
suggestive recommendation
This will get us in the national newspaper.
without an ordinance. We'll let Charlene take it. Without an ordinance regarding use of engine brakes in the village.
Please don't use your sexy engine brakes.
Is there discussion? Further discussion? Further public comment?
We probably need 4 of them. Need one on 773.
Good idea.
Maybe we'll have the town manager consult with the police chief and see if they can
Oh, yeah.
recommend 4 locations or something.
Zach, Sean,
Highway superintendent. Dave's great about consulting with the.
So, just to let you know too, we have our V-Trans is coming to slam the poles in the ground for the speed, flashing speed limit signs tomorrow. So those will be on, like in the dip on Franklin Street and up by the Douglas House on Grove Street, so. We'll try to get the signs up as soon as we can, we've got all the stuff there, so, but those are going up hopefully this week.
All right. Ready to vote? Anything else to be said? Pat Wood?
Yeah, I just wonder, there's a lot of signs on the road, you guys that actually drive, I mean, you get noticed.
Signs everywhere, signs.
Yeah, signs everywhere, and it's starting to look, you know, if you take a picture of downtown, it's beautiful, there's a ton of signs in there already. I don't drive a truck, I have no idea whether I would notice that or not. What do you guys think?
Roadside clutter?
I guess my feeling is that it will be far enough out of town where it wouldn't really be in the downtown area.
We still have to keep it in our road limits though. I mean, if we start going out on 7, which, you know, Route State 7 is right at the fire station, and State 7 up here is Steinberg Road, so we'd have to.
That's what I was thinking, like Steinberg Road would be one end, and this fire station would be the other, and then right on 73 somewhere, you know, possibly in front of the police station or something in there where.
That's State Highway. The town highway stops right at the Willow Road intersection.
So you're saying where it's ours, we probably could post it where it's the state?
Yeah, exactly.
We have to be real careful when we're putting signs in the state right away, so that's why we had to move.
Don't make it purple.
Purple, yeah, because they think we have a toll road.
for some reason, I always thought there was a Steinberg Mountain Garage. So.
I think there used to be, Tracy, I agree.
What's that?
I think there used to be.
I think there used to be. Mike, well, you said so.
Maybe they took it down during segment.
That could be, but I mean, this wasn't like it was that long ago, so I'm thinking you probably did take it down for segment 6, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't a sign up right here. They're across from Green Mountain or just by the Legion or someplace here.
Okay, further comment? If not, ready to vote on the recommendation sign without an ordinance and with the town manager to consult with the highway department and the police department regarding placements in 4 locations. All in favor on that basis, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. It's unanimous. Further public comment for items not on the agenda. Representative Jerome.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple announcements. The Climate Council is offering opportunities for Vermont citizens to make input on any concerns they have about climate change and any solutions that they have. So there's 3 upcoming Zoom meetings that are still on their docket, and I will get those to Charlene so that she can put them out for you. There's one 30th, I think there's one on the 2nd, and let me see. So yeah, the 30th, the 5th, and the 6th of October. And then lastly, I just want to encourage people to get their vaccine boosters. I helped my folks who are age 88 and 85 get their vaccine scheduled appointments today, and it was absolutely no problem, and they're able to get them within a few days. So I just wanted to make that announcement and let people know that that is service out there, and it's being handled very efficiently and expeditiously. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further public comment? Items not on the agenda? If not, we'll move on. Item 5, ARPA discussion. Really pleased to have here Regional Planner from Rutland Regional Planning Commission, Eric Hall, to help advise the board about ARPA qualified and eligible funding projects.
Great, well, thanks for having me. I'm gonna stay seated while we talk, just so I have my material a little more handy. So, obviously, ARPA funds are a big topic of discussion these days. The RPCs across the state, I'll just give you a little kind of background on how we're approaching this. So we've been tasked to help municipalities in our region, in coordination with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, develop and identify needs and priorities for projects that these funds could be used on. Treasury has released an interim final rule. That's their eligibility requirements for these funds. That ruling is not final. It went through a comment period. They put together a frequently asked question and answer document from that comment period. It's an additional 50 pages to the 150 pages of guidance. The final rule is expected out this fall. When exactly is unknown. So there's still, some things to be learned, and with that, the goal of these funds, the funding objectives are to support the COVID-19 response effort, replace lost public sector revenue, support immediate economic stabilization, and also address this systemic public health and economic challenges that kind of have contributed to an unequal impact of the pandemic. So the goal is for an economic response more than an economic development perspective. And with that, I'm here from the RRPC to help you navigate this ARPA process. At the end of the day, though, the final decision still lies with the municipalities, with the select board. And, communicating through this process, developing a list of projects, prioritizing that list, and determining, eligibility is all something that we can work together on. There's a network amongst the state's RPCs in conjunction with the League of Cities and Towns that's really developing, and so the resources that are available to answer questions about eligibility and determine where a project may fall in regards to that eligibility is growing. So, if there's a question that falls into, if there's a project that falls into a maybe, kind of that gray area, we can follow that up the ladder and get a clear black and white answer. But right now, not everything is clear. So the biggest, the thing to keep in mind right now, because the town should have received 2 payments, which should amount to half of the funds that it will be receiving. Having money in the bank makes it hard to go slow, but that's the message that the RPCs and the League of Cities and Towns is kind of sending out for the moment is take your time, make sure you have a definitive answer on eligibility, reach out to us with questions. I'm happy to be here. It's great to get a feel for what towns are thinking, and that's going to lead to a sharing of projects. So it's expected that a dashboard is going to be developed where towns will be able to see what other towns have come up with for eligible project ideas, and that sharing may spark some discussion and lead you down a road of an eligible project that would benefit the community. So yeah, the goal is to meet the pandemic response needs, rebuild a stronger, more equitable economy and community, and make some lasting improvements. So, yeah, I'm open for questions, and Tim, you had your hand up, or
I'll let
Seth?
Seth go first if he wants.
Oh,
Well, I was just going to jump into this by saying, we actually started with 19 projects initially, and whittled it down to 9, and then whittled it down to 5, and then kind of came up with our top 2 kind of thing. And it sounded like you just offered to, chase up the ladder to see if what we came up with would actually be eligible.
Yep.
And I don't know if you know, but we had talked about using the ARPA money for a solar panels project. And part of the feeling is that it would be an economic rock for our community to build on, that would be sturdy and dependable. And it would be, and thus it would help everybody economically. And it would also answer climate change, which I noticed in the wording on some of the ARPA literature. Because clearly the state's trying to reach the 2050 goal with 90% renewables. And so it would push Brandon way along that path. And so I would be very curious as to what you could do for us with seeing if it would be eligible.
So that's one suggestion is a solar array, and it would be town-owned.
That's right.
It would offset the town's electric costs to the tune of $100,000+ a year and save 3% or more for the taxpayer.
Okay.
Every taxpayer.
One thing, as I'm thinking here, another thing to keep in mind is projects that align with your town plan are also a good place to start. So if there are projects identified as goals in your town plan that also meet eligibility criteria for these funds, those are going to be viewed as high priority because it's already been identified, as a direction that the town would like to go. But I will, as far as the solar array, thinking of it from an economic recovery perspective versus economic development is a tough thing to do, and solar array sounds just initially to me more of an economic development that would, offset the town's electric costs.
In perpetuity.
Right.
It would be the strongest way to support our town economically, because it would basically give us cash flow into the future to do all these other projects we want to do.
Well, I can definitely run that one with the ladder.
I mean, I would love to see it follow through, because I realize it's on the edge of what's allowed, but it's so clearly, fiducially, the most responsible thing we could do is to take this money and put it into something that would generate more money for us. And so it would be really good for our community.
Yes. Eric, any project that would fall under clean water and drinking water funding already applied, or already is approved project for this funding, right?
Correct. So the infrastructure category pertains to water, wastewater, and broadband. Those are fairly broad categories that, as far as eligibility goes, repairing or upgrading systems, building new systems that support, that provide these services to the community. Routine maintenance doesn't necessarily fall into it. Say for example, it's time to do your 20-year check on your wastewater facility. That wouldn't necessarily fall in, but if you already had that in your budget to do your check, and then that identified issues that needed to be remedied, those issues would then be covered with these ARPA funds. But yes, so clean water, drinking water, wastewater, broadband are the identified infrastructure investments that are more or less eligible. One thing that came up in discussion recently, so we have a team of RPCs and a Vermont League of Cities and Towns ARPA lead who we meet bi-weekly. And we had a guest speaker from DEC, the Water Investment Division, I believe, who identified this projects that are related to the state's Clean Water State Revolving Fund, I believe, which would include your municipal roads general permit projects, because that handles, you're handling stormwater. Those projects are, it's looking like those projects are eligible for ARPA funding. So that opens up some doors as far as, if you're projects to meet your MRGP, then you could potentially use some of these ARPA funds to fund those projects. And like I said, that's just something that developed, last week that kind of came to our attention. So it seems like every week, every couple of weeks, there's more information, there's more clarity. But yeah, in regards to capital projects, water, wastewater, and broadband are the real focus that they're trying to push with these funds.
So Eric, could I ask, I think there's been some change, there's been a lot of change since we initially talked about it. I just wanted to kind of state for the group here tonight in the record what figures we're talking about. So initially, and I think as late July, we had been confirmed at $390,008.76 for Brandon. And then when the county allotments were reapplied, now we're talking about $1,116,488.75. So the kind of scale of the ARPA relief to the town has grown pretty significantly. And I think that it bears opening up the public process again, because I think that there are some projects that maybe someone didn't even suggest that they had in mind, because they said, well, you can't do it for $400,000, but maybe you can do it for $1 million. So I just wanted to say that about change, and that I did go to a couple of trainings, like webinar-ish things with the league, and I wonder if the one that I think Tim also went to, maybe Dave also went, you never know who's there, right? So the slide that I picked up to try and ask you about this, it talks about eligible uses for necessary water and sewer projects, right? And kind of that's always been like a firm yes. But on the slide from the webinar I went to earlier in the summer, it also included cybersecurity, which we haven't talked about, lead service line replacement, which is kind of a water thing, and then climate change and resilience. And that's kind of the one I was hanging the solar on, because it seems to fill both a climate change, it addresses climate change and it addresses energy resilience in terms of just us being able to have a steady supply here in Vermont and in Brandon. Is that no longer operative? Do you know?
I'm trying to think of, because I was probably at that webinar too. I'm trying to think of if it was all on the same slide. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm thinking the climate resilience may be geared more toward the wastewater aspect. So, making sure your facility is able to handle these significant surges in water. I can, I already have it on the list to look into the solar array aspect. And, I'll make a point to refresh myself on that climate resilience piece and get back to you on that.
That's great, thank you.
Um,
And just last confirm, so the obligation date, the date to kind of like settle the project is the end of 2024?
Correct, yep.
Okay, I think that we were laboring under an idea that it was 2022 or something like that.
So,
2023.
and obligate means just be in the contracting process.
Right.
And then funds need to be spent by December 31st, 2026. And to build off one of your comments before, as far as kind of going back and involving the public again, I'm available for public, special public forums to discuss this as well. So feel free to call on me for that, and if any other ideas come to the table, send them my way.
Great, thanks, Eric. Yeah.
So Eric, back to the MRGP stuff. Is this, even if we have other stormwater projects, would those fall under this? Or would it have to be like that sort of TMDL related type stuff?
Let's see here. If they are projects that fall into the state.
Dave, what's MRGB?
Municipal roads general permit.
Yep.
So every year we get a grant to do more ditch work and drainage issues, mostly on our dirt roads to keep, it's the phosphorus level thing with Lake Champlain on our creek. So like we just got done one this week. But we have a list of a lot of roads, so I'm thinking if culverts fall in there, especially on paved roads, that would actually help on a couple things.
So you can only pave over
Right.
the ground that's disturbed.
Right.
But yeah, you're on the right track there.
I think you're going to see a lot of culverts put in at a very gentle diagonal.
Town farm road, not culvert.
Other board comment for Eric, or questions for Eric?
I have one more.
Yeah. You're on the board.
So like with water and sewer, if we do, let's just pick Union Street just for fun. If we do that one, and like say we're doing a sidewalks replacement there maybe, and we decide to do water and sewer at the same time, because we have to dig up the road, we can do curb to curb paving on that road.
I believe so, because you would be, you'd be running both sides of the road, really.
Well, you have laterals to houses and everything.
Right. And I can confirm that, but yeah, if you're covering the project that you're doing, especially in conjunction with another project that's funded separately, then that, it's my interpretation that would fall under eligible use.
Thanks.
Do you have other project ideas that you want to share, that you'd like to, and it can be, the full list? You mentioned the solar array was one of two.
We also talked about a garage, a municipal garage.
Okay, so that kind of falls, that would be a capital project, and that does not fall into those eligible uses. So capital, so general infrastructure projects aren't considered a response to the public health emergency. So that's the thought you have to keep in mind, is this responding to the pandemic, to the issues that the pandemic has created? Unless it responds to a specific pandemic-related public health need, like an investment in a facility to deliver vaccines. But I imagine the garage wouldn't primarily be used as a pop-up vaccination.
We can do vaccination. A little sign over the door, vaccination center.
So those type of general infrastructure projects that would be eligible would be like affordable housing in a qualified census tract.
And I think we determined we're not qualified census.
Correct, you're not.
So I think what might be helpful from a time efficiency point of view, to respect your time and the rest of the meeting and so forth, is maybe we could get to Eric the list that came into us from the public on the first round, just for your general edification. And open the floor now to anybody who wants to ask a specific question of Eric about a certain project that maybe didn't hit that first matrix. Bill?
What about, we're talking about the public health emergency, what about outdoor recreation or creating opportunities for outdoor recreation for citizens that were forced outdoors?
Right, so that again is kind of a gray area. So part of that is if there was deferred maintenance on, a public park, then remedying that deferred maintenance would be eligible. It's tough to say if you wanted to go build a new dog park, that likely wouldn't fall into an eligible use. But there's still, that's a question that's actually been asked a few times recently, and we're searching out a little more black and white answer on, do you have an example of?
Maybe a tennis court fell into disrepair, for instance, or a walking trail that needed to be upgraded, that sort of thing.
Okay. Those are, like I said, kind of a gray area, but one that I will add to the list and get clarity on.
Others with some questions for Eric for Rutland Regional Planning. Bernie Carr.
I think you mentioned early on something about economic impact of businesses that were affected from it and ways to help them with the losses they felt they had suffered over those years. As Representative Jerome can tell you, we fell in this weird little hole of having to compare construction income to pandemic income. I couldn't show a 50% loss for the same amount of period in 2020 as I could in 2019 and that was my doors wide open in 2019 and my doors literally locked for 5 weeks in 2020. I couldn't show a 50% loss because all of our numbers were so low from 2019. And they tried so many different ways to make this work and then nothing worked. And these businesses suffered for 3 years. There were many established businesses. I've been in business for 40 years. I could show them 10 years of income to give them a baseline to compare to the 2020, which would have been a fair and equitable loss figure. We couldn't do it, and there were so many hoops. I thank you, Steph and Butch, for trying to do what they could do. Is there anything like that might be able to be used for some of those compensations?
Right, so in that regard, it would be, up to the town to create some type of system for, whether taking applications, taking a certain percentage, and allocating that to a small business recovery grant or whatever you would want to call it, and gauging how the pandemic affected those businesses. Like you said, it is a challenge. So
it isn't a challenge. I mean, it's a very cut and dry, black and white, easy thing to do, but it's not for the federal government, because they just said it's 2019 to 2020, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Right.
So we can make that case quite easily. And if not, can you give me an idea of where you might use that type of an example that you said there for helping businesses with loss of income or something? How would you work that? What kind of example is that? Can you give us?
In regards to how would the system work, or?
I don't remember now exactly what you said when you were reading them off. One of the things was something about businesses and lost income and blah, blah, blah. Give me an example.
I'm trying to remember. Are you thinking about replacing lost public sector revenue?
No.
No, I think it was, private sector.
Yeah.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
And there is, you know, the public health, response to the public health emergency obviously affected small businesses. Well, the public health emergency affected small businesses, and so responding to that would be trying to support those small
Oh,
businesses.
okay, gotcha.
You know, determining how something like that would be set up and the system for those wouldn't be cut and dry. Because there's a lot of focus on travel, hospitality, and you know, so that includes restaurants that were closed. And for businesses outside of that identified sector, it brings into, again, this gray area of how do you compare and determine, you know, that loss, and then in turn, how do you quantify supporting or, you know, providing assistance for that.
I think all those formulas are in place between the federal and state programs that were very successful throughout the state. There's like Waterbury, us, Middlebury, those three, those pockets just weren't normal. And I think if you take that same formula and just change what they use, because we could do it as a local group as opposed to a federal or state government issue. So I don't think it would be that difficult to really do. And if they don't, many of the businesses down did get quite a bit of help. And if that works for them and they don't qualify, then boom, we move on. But there's a few businesses that just didn't get any help.
So maybe adding that to the list as far as just a possibility of exploring some type of, you know, options for supporting local small business.
Okay, thank you.
I think it is on the list. I think it was on the initial list, and it's also on this list that came to us tonight about example uses of funds from the Treasury's sheet. I think this came from Eric to Dave and then to the board. And it says to support small businesses with loans, grants, in-kind assistance, counseling programs. So I think clearly it's probably an eligibility thing. I think that the reason it didn't make it past the first go through on the matrix was some concern, and I'll be candid, I had some of this concern. I would love to see us use the ARPA money to give the widest possible benefit to people who live in the town, and I think that there have been a number of other programs for businesses, and I know that they're not all perfect matches, but I feel like, you know, kind of targeting business owners who have been adversely impacted would not necessarily be a wide benefit. It would be a meaningful benefit, and it's valid. It's a valid loss. It's a valid recovery effort. But that's a hesitation I have about it. And that would happen, you know, during the deliberation process kind of thing. It's not, you know.
I totally agree with you, Seth, and I understand your point, but again, I think what you'd find is this is a minute amount of money in $1 million+ but for those businesses affected, it's a significant, you know, amount of money that they had lost out on. And so I totally understand where you're coming from with that.
And I do you as well. Thank you. Other folks who would like to ask our RRPC person, Eric Hall, regional planner, about ARPA stuff? So Eric, thank you so much I think you've reoriented us, and I think the biggest way was to make us think about it in terms of economic response rather than economic development, because I think we candidly were probably moving more on the development side. And I think that if we get you the list that we combed through the first time, maybe that you can kind of take a gander at some things that maybe we've missed in terms of the COVID nexus, is what we called it. And then we have time to obligate money, and we have a new scope of money coming to us, so I think that some public input is still in order for some time.
I will make one more comment. There are more funds coming, you know, through the state agencies as well, so leveraging your funds is important. That's all I'll say.
That's perfect, yeah.
Sorry, quick
Yes,
question.
Bill.
So are you saying that that money can be used as match money toward other grants?
No, you
Okay.
can't generally use it
Just check.
to match, no.
Got that.
But COVID response, COVID relief money through other state agencies is, there should be a funders webinar coming up that, Dave, you may get a, invite to, that'll be through BLCT and, pass it along to everybody else too, because that will discuss these other pools of funds that are gonna be coming down the line.
Great, thank you, Ed.
You're welcome, thank you, and keep in touch.
We'll go on to item 6, declassifying the class 4 portion of Steinberg Road to a trail. We had a hearing, we had a vote, and this is before us now, Dave.
So this is the order that we have to sign, and that gets recorded, or you guys have to sign, that gets recorded.
Okay.
At some point, we're gonna have to put a gate up. I'm sure that the folks on the road would still like to be able to get in and out of there. So, I did speak with one of the landowners earlier this week, or last week, I guess, it's already early this week. I don't think we can get something done this fall, our guys are pretty busy right now, but we'll do the best we can to get gates out there and do what we gotta do.
Thank you, Dave. So no real news here, just kind of making official some board action from August. What's the pleasure of the board on the order of discontinuance?
I'd make a motion that we discontinue the Steinberg Road. That portion of Steinberg Road.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Wyman and a second by Mr. Markowski to sign the order of discontinuance for the Class 4 portion of Steinberg Road and reclassify it as a legal trail. Yeah. Further discussion? Oh, Ralph, you here.
I have a question on
Yes.
that. Now, can we put rocks in the way until the gates get put up? With deer season coming, that's usually the dumping time of the year down there, so.
So, after you and I talked last week, that was a surprise landowner I talked to. I mean, we've got some Jersey barriers that we've had laying around that we could bring down, but no one will be able to get through if they're there. So like you and, your neighbors won't be able to use that road. I don't know if we wanna do that or not.
I can ask them, I don't think it'll be an issue with them, but it's just be nice to keep people out of there for deer season, because that's trash season too.
We can get some, we have to get some signs saying that those are there too, so nobody tries to drive through them.
So it can be blocked off until
Energy
the
rates will stop them. But yeah, let me see what we can do for signs on there too, but, Sean and I did talk about doing the Jersey barriers there temporarily until we get gates ordered, so.
It's fine to me, I don't know about the office, but it was.
Yeah, I'll go talk to them, figure it out.
Further comment? Ready to vote? Side conversation's over. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it. Very good. Item 7, BLSG resolution discussion. There's a BLSG document before us with a couple of changes. Colin Wayne.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Yeah, I've got Mr. Rosenberger right here in person.
Yeah, if you remember last month, we were here to ask if you had any suggestions to changes you'd like to see in the agreement. Brandon had none. We had one suggestion from one select board. Seems like after 40-some odd years of the district being in existence, one town seems to be afraid that we're gonna go hog wild and spend a lot of money and the towns are gonna get stuck. So to remedy the situation, the board has agreed to limit a year-to-year budget to no more than 5%. If for any reason we need more money at that time, it has to be a unanimous decision between all the member towns, and I'm sure that somebody from the board will be in front of you to tell you why we're looking for more money. So I just want to make sure that that is okay with everybody. If you all agree, that's great. If you don't, let me know why, and I will take it back to the board.
The BLSG board is okay with the proposed change?
Yes. Then I have, go ahead.
So Wayne, are we to assume that when we do budgeting,
Yeah,
that it's a 5% increase every year?
No.
Or less?
no,
Yeah.
less, could be less, it could be none. But it won't be more than 5, so that'll give you something to start with.
So we should probably budget, we're thinking that 5% could happen.
I have another question, is, the board wants to know, what kind of payment schedule each town is gonna have. And for all the years I've been on the board, every town is basically paid after they collect the taxes. And Brandon is always paid 4 times a year. I'm sure that you'd probably like to keep that.
So the town treasurer's here, which is
Yeah.
fortunate because we would be, whoa, should do this. Sue, would you comment?
Well, you can ask us to pay you in a lump sum if you want. I mean, we just do what organizations ask typically. I mean, or twice a year. I mean, I guess, you know, we've just done it 4 times a year, and whether you asked for it that way originally, but we can, I mean, we could do it however you guys want it.
Well, when I got on the board, it was 4 times a year, it's always been 4 times a year. And to my way of thinking, it's better for the board to have the payments stretched out that way, because there was a comment before that when you get a whole lump sum of money at one time, you have a tendency to want to spend it. So this kind of helps us out through the course of the year.
Yeah,
So if you're fine with paying 4 times a year,
that's good by me.
that's fine. And then I have one other thing. When we budget the money to the town, give the town an assessment, is it safe to assume that you are trusting us to do larvicide work and adulticide work, both out of that budget? Because there are times when most of the money is spent for adulticide, but there are things that larvicide needs to do, use equipment that basically falls under the adulticide program. And there seems to be a bone of contention on the board that we need to micromanage this. And I would just like to get a sense from the board whether you think the budget needs to be micromanaged.
Thoughts? My personal thought is that the board has consistently said that the BLSG does important work, that we support it. The assessment has always been justified during the budget workshops by a BLSG representative coming to us and speaking about various demands on the BLSG budget, whether it's legal that came up one year, those kinds of things. And I don't have any desire that Brandon would further dictate how you spend the money that you assessed through your budget development process. So I would say no. I don't think that we want the budget to be micromanaged at the BLSG level. I don't.
I would agree with that.
Let them all say for themselves.
I would agree that we don't want it to be micromanaged, but I wouldn't cut off the possibility that we, some point in the future, might have an opinion that we might want to express about adulticide and larvicide. And so I wouldn't want to take it off the table, that we would have an opinion at some point.
No, but right now, I'm looking for your opinion for right now.
How about micromanaging? No, I would agree with him, that we're not interested in micromanaging.
Okay.
Any others?
Okay.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Any public comment on BLSG? There's some revisions, and it's gonna not be BLSG, I think, for a while. It'll be Otter Creek Watershed Insect Control District pretty soon,
Yeah, well,
looks like.
I'm trying to get it started by the beginning of the year, but there's a lot of hoops we gotta jump through.
Sure. Public comment? Not, all right, thank you very much. Thank you, Wayne, for bringing that and for the questions and the explanation. Item 8, regional emergency management.
So, yeah, the state region, or emergency management group has decided that they want to change the way that towns are being represented with just an emergency management director, which is me, to have more of a regional say in it, and that they were looking, I went to this webinar a couple of weeks ago, they want to have the EMD, and then they also want to have an emergency services person from every town, which I brought up to them that, we only have a police department, that the select board doesn't oversee fire and rescue. So that seems to be the majority of towns are that way, with volunteer fire departments and everything, but there might come a point here where we have to appoint someone that's in an emergency service to, this whole voter thing now with the regional committees, and we're not quite sure why they're doing it this way, but at some point, we're probably going to reach out to fire and rescue to see if someone wants to be a representative for Brandon. So, just running that by you, if you guys know anyone.
Sure, you're saying your recommendation would not be to appoint like a police chief or something?
I don't think we have enough police department to appoint. We're running thin.
Okay.
I think it would be more of, I know like Pittsburgh has a pretty big emergency response team. There's a lot of fire department folks that are on it. I think their EMD is actually a firefighter too. But they're really looking for two folks now, so.
Okay. Well, we've been collaborating, cooperating and so forth.
I think they're gonna make it mandatory if that all goes well, so we're gonna have to really dig deep and reach out and find someone. Maybe Mike's interested.
I'm not in emergency response anymore.
Towns are helped opportunity.
But it has to be someone from a service. We can't use our health officer as the
He's a fire chief.
emergency services. Yes.
He's got time for one more meeting.
Yeah.
Let's see if Fire Chief Bill Peck might be interested.
I can. I just wanted to
Yeah,
have everybody be able
yeah.
to reach out and take someone or ask someone, because we all have different hats in town here too. And I think someone might, I'm just that it's in a public meeting so folks know that we're looking for someone.
Okay, everybody catch that? We're looking for someone from the emergency services, but probably not the police department, to participate in the regional emergency structure. Public comment. Item 9, Greenways Committee presentation. Select Board Chair alum, Devin Fuller. Very exciting.
So I've been asked to come and start this presentation because the Greenways has kind of morphed out of the downtown Brandon Alliance and our designated downtown. So I was asked to give a basic synopsis. And I'll be as quick as I can, but I'll let you know I've been away from humans for 18 months, so I have an opportunity to talk and might drag on a little bit.
And we've appreciated that.
That's been 18 months.
So, I want to give you the basic history of the Downtown Brandon Alliance. It started as 24 Center Street, which is a 501c3 when Warren and Lorraine Kimball and Virginia Russell applied for and received the designated downtown from the state. The designated downtown program is a Vermont state program, and the goal of that program is to keep the core of small Vermont towns viable as business centers. So they do that through different tax incentives and favorable grant selections and other advantages that we have. We have a state coordinator that we reach out to when we need help. The program only consists of 23 towns in the state, so there's only 23 towns that have this designated downtown. We have a state coordinator we work with, and then each town has a board that manages this designated downtown. excuse me, the Kimbells and Mrs. Russell used this designated downtown to help create the gazebo park across from the town offices. And then once that was created, they turned it over to the town and, well, it basically sat on the shelf for many years. And then after the 2007 financial collapse, 24 Center Street was reborn, and the state came out and said, you guys have to start using this designated downtown, and you're gonna lose it. So, once it was rejuvenated, the board wanted to change the working name of the designated downtown to something that had a little business sound to it, which was the DBA, Downtown Brand Alliance. And the A really is about the alliance, and we want to work together with all the folks in town that are helping keep the downtown cool and viable. The town, obviously, Chamber of Commerce, volunteers, who else are we talking about? Local businesses, obviously, and that's what our big alliance idea was. We're working with everybody we possibly can to keep the downtown buzzing. The designated downtown initially came from a national program, which is the Main Street America, and they use that template, which is how we kind of got to where we are with the greenways. This template is there are four different sub-organizations of the DBA. There's Economic Vitality, Design Group, Promotions, and Organizations. I'll kind of go on, I'll finish up what I was saying, then back up to why Greenways came out of this, out of our organization. But I wanted to just kind of go over how the rejuvenated DBA is going so far. Some of the simple things that we do are the summer flower pots, the Christmas decorations throughout town, and then we moved on to bigger stuff like the VDAT report, which is a report that we were eligible for because of being designated downtown. And that report has been used by, I think, the Economic Development Director, the DBA, the Chamber to coordinate certain things. Logos that are on the trucks and so forth all came out of that VDAT report. So that thing has been very strong for us. We've created barn raising events that have allowed the communities to come together and to talk about what they would like to see the community, I'm sorry, for the DBA work towards. The overflow structure, I don't know if anybody in this on the board remembers the overflow structure, but I do remember watching Mike across the street pound rock for day after day after day.
I
Do you
remember.
have nightmares about that? Do you still have nightmares about that?
Headaches still from that.
But, so that overflow structure, which I found fascinating listening to, is it Brian, that was from, pardon me? Eric, talk about the fact that this funding, this ARPA funding is coming in is gonna help with flood resilience and we've already done it. I mean, I know there's more, like Dave talks about, but I think Brandon did a great job by putting in that overflow structure. And the other thing we did was we helped with the design group helped with the design and remodeling of the town office. And those two events were paid for through grants. So no taxpayer money, direct taxpayer money from Brandon residents paid for the overflow structure or the remodeling of the.
No, they did. The town bonded that overflow structure. It was several $100,000.
But it was a 3 million plus.
The town office.
Yeah, it was-
The town
it was
office was
not
the
the
grant
whole
that was paid for.
Yes.
The town office, I apologize, the town office was paid for through grants only. And that was again because of the designated downtown. The Smith Block apartment, we've got tax breaks for the owner of the Smith Block so he can build his apartments. We teamed up with the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce for Segment 6 project, which when the Segment 6 came through town, we worked with the Chamber to help businesses, get through that ordeal. And through the work that we've done, ideas and thoughts that we've had, Greenways came out of it. So the Greenways was initially started when we were going to, am I missing any of these, Robert? I haven't missed a bunch of them, haven't I? The one I want to find is this one. So greenways started with looking at that land behind the Smith block. We wanted to try to turn that area into walking paths, and those walking paths would then radiate out from the town to different portions of our community. As far as Estherbrook and the high school, and once we start getting out of the downtown core, that's no longer our jurisdiction, but the idea is that we would start in this core. Well, from grants to who owned that property to now who owns that property, the greenways kind of weren't able to really get anything going with this. But the greenways morphed into other things, art projects, and now a park on Franklin Street. And so my role here is just to give you the basics of where the greenways kind of started from. And it rolled out of our design committee. We have a strong, we always have a strong, probably the strongest design committee in the state when it comes to the designated downtown. Our problem has always been funding. So with that, I don't know if you guys have any questions about the designated downtown that I can answer before I pass this on to Ally.
Oh, it's Melody.
Melly's next? Sorry. It tricked me. Okay. But that's the basics of where we are, and these guys are going to give you some more information about where we're heading with the designated downtown and beyond, actually.
Right, so I'm going to talk about if you could go to the next slide. We started out, when I came on, we started out looking at a walkable downtown, and we wanted to focus on the 5 parks. So and how to get it so that people could be walking through town, visitors or residents, and the anchors would be the 5 parks in town. It would be so we could have a walking ability, but we'd also get people to notice businesses as they were walking through, going to the different parks. And you can see on the right-hand side of the slide that there are samples of the signs in the parks. We worked for a long time on coming up with the designs and getting those placed in the parks so that people coming through town could, either driving through or walking, could know the parks. And I have to admit, I've lived here quite a while, and there were some parks I did not know the names to until this project. So that's that slide. And the next slide. From that walking downtown, it was a natural segue to say, how can we radiate out from the downtown? And it came at a really opportune time that when we were talking about this, we went into lockdown for the pandemic. So people were focused on staying local and staying home, but getting out and appreciating what we had here. So we came up with a number of walks around town. We came up with 7 that we ended up creating this brochure. Every one of them, if you start in the downtown, you are never more than 5 miles from the center of town. But the walks range in distance from maybe 1.5 miles up to almost 10 miles. We did some walks up in the neighborhoods so that people who are new to town or visiting town could sort of see another aspect of Brandon. And we also went into longer routes. One of them was to go out by Sanderson Bridge and past the Barn Opera and out around and come back in on Union. Another one was to focus on the iron furnace in Forestdale. So we had a route that went out there and came back through. And a third one from a distance was to start at Park Village and go out the Arnold District Road, come back in on the Hollow Road, and in on Steinberg, which is where I would like to say at this moment, thank you very much for keeping that trail, because Steinberg Road as a trail, because it's on that brochure, it's part of that walk, and I really appreciate that you've kept that open to the public. We also, to go back to the previous slide, we also worked hard at identifying the hiking trails through Hawk Hills. There are 3 that start either at Otter Valley or from the other end of the old Brandon Road. And we wanted to highlight that as an option. It's not a road walk, it's a wood walk, but it's in easy distance of the downtown, so that visitors or residents coming here could take advantage of that. One of the things that was really important was that this isn't just for tourists, but there are people in town who love to exercise, they love to get out and walk. So this brochure is for everyone. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. We have a few projects that we're working on. They're in the planning stages, they're in the dreaming stages, they're in the can we do this kind of stage. And the first one, and the reason we are looking, all of the next three things I'm going to talk about are projects that, for people who live outside of the downtown area, is there a way that they can easily walk into town or ride a bike into town and access the downtown without having to use their car? So this first slide is, we wanted to look at a bike route to Neshabe School. And I'm sure a lot of you remember that in 1995, there was a plan put forward to try to create a trail to Otter Valley. And I'm sorry, to Neshabe. And I'm not quite sure why it never went through. I know that almost all the landowners on the way had given permission, but then it stalled. And Wade Davis has been really instrumental in trying to get this resurrected, get a way back to Neshabe. So he pulled out all the old documents, and he's looked at the previous trails that were planned. We've walked a few of the trails in the woods between Town Farm Road and Neshabe School. There's an ATV walking trail system in there that would work very well. But at this point, we are still trying to find the connecting point back into the downtown area. So this is still in the planning stages. There's been a lot of heart put into it, but we kind of put it on the back burner because of some of the other projects that you'll be hearing about later. The next slide is when the Hurricane Irene came through and did so much damage to Newton Road, as you know, there's been a number of properties that became vacant. And there's one property right at the end of Newton Road where it meets Route 53. It's a very nice green space right along the river. So we went out there with Dave to look at that as a possibility for a park. And it's quite possible that it could be a nice, just a scenic sitting park, not with equipment or anything, but just a peaceful green space. And it ties in really nicely with our walks because it's part of the walk that goes out to the iron furnace, so that it would be a logical stopping point coming or going for anyone who wanted to do the iron furnace loop. And the next slide is the last one we've been dreaming about. It's trying to figure out a way that people at Park Village could walk or bike into Brandon without having to go on the narrow sidewalk that's so busily trafficked by lots of trucks, but to find a walking, biking route that could go up. This is in a really early stage. We've kind of looked at possibilities. There are landowner considerations. We've talked to someone about a grant for scoping out the possible route. We are looking at other expertise for finding a way to put a bike trail in there. There is a possible way, but this is still very much in the beginning stages, but I just wanted to let you know that that's one of the projects we're working on. And then the next slide. When we were creating the brochures for the walking tour, Tim introduced us to an app for your phone called Geotours, and it dovetails perfectly with the walks that we've done. The way the app works is that when it's mapped out, if you go to a certain point on the tour, your phone will automatically trigger an audio guide to where you are. It also comes up with a map to show you where to go next, and it allows you to put pictures on. And an example I wanted to give was going out to, on the Sanderson Road Barn Opera Loop walk. There are 2 Crown Point markers on the way. And so as you're coming along to the marker, the picture shows up on your phone, and you can get a brief history of what is the Crown Point Road, and why did it go through Brandon. And so that's the beauty of the Geotours. When we were working with this, we started it with just our walks, but then it became really apparent that there are so many opportunities for Geotours to work in Brandon. So Tim has been really instrumental in helping us put the things together. But for instance, we created a joke tour that has local kids telling jokes. For instance, a bank joke next to the bank. And so as a kid is walking through the downtown, they can hear their joke tour. We have an art tour. We have a history tour. We have an I Spy tour based on the architecture I Spy game that Robert put into the reporter. We have a covered bridge tour that is a figure-8 thing that starts in Brandon. It goes south to all the covered bridges, comes back through Brandon and invites you to stop for lunch and explore the downtown, and then go out again on the northern loop to see all the covered bridges on the north side of Brandon, and then come back and stay the night in Brandon, of course. So we've completed some of these Geotours tours. We have a lot more in the making, and there's just open-ended possibilities of what we could do with this. And the reason you see the sign there is that we were talking about a sign in the parking lot when people come to Brandon, and there would be a note there to let you know about Geotours. And I think we're also going to have it at the Stephen Douglas House, so that when visitors come to Brandon, or people are coming to shop in Brandon, they would see this and be able to take advantage of it. And I'm just going to end that Robert is going to play a clip from the Geotours featuring Devin Fuller, starting us on the downtown shopping tour that we're hoping to create.
Tim, Bill, will this audio play through if I don't turn this audio on here, you know?
No, it should, I mean.
Let's try it. Not working.
No, I think you gotta play it through yours.
Okay.
I'll mute this one. Or maybe I won't.
Brandon is known as the most beautiful street in Vermont. Just imagine it. Just come take a walk and discover all the historic homes and buildings in Brandon. Downtown Brandon is a great place for great food, too. Oh, the shopping? Yeah, what do you want? Brandon is also the best place to jump off for a Vermont adventure. Whatever you're looking for in a plain New England town, Brandon has it. Come visit. You'll be happy you did.
You're such a
I don't know if you're
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Right. Okay, so wrapping up after that,
Yeah, turn your,
Okay.
yeah, my God, voice above. I started
Did you turn it on?
Oh, wait, this?
Slide.
Yeah, it's working.
There you go. Okay, great.
Okay, so you might wonder how public art ties into walking tours and trails. but connecting to all of this, it's really about making the downtown and the surrounding area enjoyable for people visiting town, who live in town, to be able to walk around and have a nice time. And so you can see what we currently have in town. We have some historical monuments. There have been various art projects that have happened. Thanks to Brand Artists Guild and Warren Kimball, like the quilt squares. And we could definitely add to this. A lot of towns are having murals, and we have different areas in downtown that would be appropriate for them to use. So we've been going around, and different artists have approached us about working. Like we have the World Palette Project is a guy from Vermont who has been doing this sort of iconic logo, has approached us. Different artists like Catherine Weibers, who's doing all of these murals in Rutland, we've talked to. And so we've been talking to her. So these are a couple projects she's done down in Rutland. Pretty much every mural there has been done by her because she's a local artist. She's really interested in doing this. Interested in community feedback and sort of developing different imagery that speaks to the town, but also being true to her work. And then we've also had a couple muralists move to town the last couple of years. Juniper Creative, it's Will Casso Condry, and his wife, and now I can't remember what her name is. But they've been doing a lot of work all around Vermont. Specifically now, they're in Burlington. I know she works at Loring College and has done murals there, and is really interested in doing not just art that looks nice in the community, but also engaging the community and having them help with the murals and the mural design. And recently, in the last year or two, if you're up on Church Street, they did a mural on Ben and Jerry's. And so it's kind of interesting in sort of figuring town, areas in town where we have people come and help with the murals, so everyone's involved. It's not just a piece of art we throw up on a wall. And so a couple spots we sort of looked at just as a group. This would be a nice spot for art. Was a side of Walgreens. It's really easily accessible, so you can have people come and help paint once the design is laid out and decided. And it's just an area that could be improved with some kind of art. It will look very nice now. A second one would be behind 27 Center Street, coming down Thomas Overlook, another great blank wall that could be spiced up for people coming into town with some sort of interesting related to brand history or whatever we decide to do. And the third spot is the old bus stop that's now a concrete pad since segment 6. And one of the talks about that was speaking with Kevin Thornton, local town historian, has been really interested in having some sort of monument for Thomas Davenport. And I'm a big Brandon history guy, and there's nothing in town really to commemorate him, and you're interested for people visiting town to know about our history and an important figure there. And then another project that's kind of come out of this and is part of the chamber as well is this bank alley that's between the old Brown building and the Bar Harbor Bank. Since segment 6, it's no longer accessible to cars, and so making this more pedestrian friendly. And so talking about tearing up old pavement, putting down some nice pavers. We're talking about putting some planters at either end to keep cars from out-of-state visitors going down that alleyway. And then working with local schools, so Otter Valley and Ashby, to have rotating art exhibitions. So you could have little plywood panels or canvas, and we rotate seasonally or however long we want to have them up for, maybe adding some lights. But we've been doing different brainstorming meetings to come up with ideas for that and working that out. Coming up with a budget, and really it's just finding money and where's money coming from to do this. And it'd be really nice for people walking in County Vermont sort of using this as a cut through to this nice parking lot back there. Because right now it's pretty rough, but it's definitely walkable. And so two of the biggest projects we have right now, or just the project we're looking at doing first, because Annie and the flower shop is very excited about this. It says she has given us the okay to use her wall. And it's this prominent spot coming right into town from the north. And we had Catherine Weigers come up with a couple concepts for us. We have the trusty Brandon logo there, which is another option, but coming up with an idea that really represents what is Brandon. So different imagery there that would be eye-catching, would have people coming into town who could stop, walk, take photos, and have us improve this, what is now a boring blank wall. It's the first thing you see in front of town, and make it something that really reads true to Brandon. I think that is the last slide for the art. So if any questions about that, Brandon, Robert will be wrapping up a summary of the PowerPoint too. If there's questions there.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to talk to you guys. It's really very special to be here to think about this. You know, one of the things, Brandon came together in Hurricane Irene, and I remember 8 of us sitting there with shop vacs in, you know, Planet Cherry's place, vacuuming it out. When the culvert came through and we were wondering what to do, we pulled together and did it. Segment 6 happened, and our PIO here and everybody else on the select board pulled together to make this town what it is. And despite our pretty equally split political differences, we have other things that we really do together. And this is what keeps me here and what I love to be here for. Everybody in this town contributes to something that makes this place special. And so, you know, and plus we're in this, you know, people call this the heart and soul of New England or something. There's this historic architecture that's largely unspoiled, and that's part of Brandon's thing. It's unspoiled, unhurried, and unforgettable. And more and more people, if you notice, on the weekends are really coming here. We've got some stuff going on. So I just mentioned that Kevin Thornton is a real asset to this town. If you saw his Death in the Wilderness film, Bill Powers, who's here, you know, found a plane crash on the hillside. He's done his stories about Hawk Hill. We're actually going to make a movie about him. Blaine Cliver, who lived here, contributed very much. He and I worked together to create the town offices as architects. Blaine was the principal architect of U.S. Monuments and restored with Lee Iacocca the Statue of Liberty. Lived there. You know, that's the kind of thing we have going on here. So Kevin is helping us drive this shift with Bill's help. They've been on WCAX talking about this. Thomas Davenport is more important than, what was that guy's name, that short guy? I forget. So we're going to try to push more the Thomas Davenport idea of history and the electric vehicle, which is kind of timely right now. Think about what Ford 150s are going to be like in another year. You know, or the Tesla that, you know, this gentleman drives already. Been driving electric vehicles or hybrids since 1995. So that idea might be to pursue this, and we can certainly say more about that. But this downtown walking thing and then having art or educational pieces or something along the way is really important. The Brandon Flower Girls is unique here. There's already some movies about that. The anti-slavery thing is a really big deal right now in the world. But where the gazebo is at Green Park, there were 2 anti-slavery newspapers that were prominent in the movement at this time. And the river rivalry is just a colloquial little battle across the bridge between the Baptist church and the Congregational church. And it's an interesting story. And Kevin has some wonderful stories about that we'd like to maybe bring out in some of this so-called public art. But these are much more about knitting the community together. One of the things that's really doing this, and I talked to Bernie one day when we were looking at 17 Franklin Street, and you guys know Kirk, I won't say Kirk Douglas, but
He looks like Kirk Douglas.
Bernie called him up and said, hey, we have this idea that, you know, let's clean up that site, make it safer for kids. And could we make a little park for a little while there? And Kirk said, well, I don't really want to be a landlord right now for that property. And so, as Brandon would do it, all these different people from the Brandon Greenways group came out there and dug into dirt together. We took the rocks out of there. We filled 12 pallets with all these big stones and different stuff by hand, pretty much, and put them on pallets, and then talked together to create different plans. Originally, you know, Devin had a plan. We were going to put a swing set in, but Bill advised us that maybe that's not the best thing to do for a site like this. It's not a public park per se. So Jack, who's in the audience, thought maybe we need a peaceful walking little labyrinth or something like that. Could we do that? So we had a number of ideas. Patty Wood certainly went beyond her sketching skills for the bank alley and gave us another dramatic plan for this lot. And so over the course of the last several weeks, we have slowly been working together with let me back up here for a second, with a number of people to create this little park for a little while. And the neighborhood's been coming out, Bethany next door, and her daughters, the disabled one, Nellie, who's 8 years old, Michael from the White House, who's the chef at River Cafe, are starting to get interested. One of the moms down the street walked by with her daughter to go down to Central Park, and she said, man, it would be really cool if all we had to go was to here. And the kids across the street, where they get dropped off on the bus and have to run across the street, they've been playing on the sidewalks and stuff. So there's a huge opportunity, and thank God for Kirk, who's been so helpful with this. And the interesting thing about this, I'll show this, there's a legal statute here in the state of Vermont. It's called the Vermont Landlord and Liability Law. And it's a statute that protects landowners who let the public use their land and water free of charge for recreational purposes. And it defines itself through this statute into urban areas and for all kinds of recreational uses, which are very broad: hunting, fishing, walking, camping, biking, inline skating. And you go right down the line, there's things like rock climbing, and then it gets even into the place of rock collecting, nature studies, outdoor sports, all kinds of things like what this little property could be. So, you know, we've been fortunate that these crazy wacko Brandonites can get together and do something meaningful with each other. And, you know, even Pat Wood can handle a spud bar like nobody's business. And if you watch Melly working with a mason's hammer and a chisel, she's as good as other masons I've seen working in some ways. But this little thing, through the planning and discussions and talking about this, has begun to create a little park for a while. And so it's an example of Brandon's community working together. And if you just think about the way 17 Franklin Street was before, with its pile of foundational rubble, pretty dangerous stuff, broken glass, rebar hanging out, broken blocks and stuff, to what it is today, thanks to Kirk's guy, Andrew, and a skid steer and a little backhoe, that site is literally transformed. The grass is already growing in there. And so it's quite a miracle. This is like an exemplary project of what's happening in Brandon Greenways. We have, this is a list of all the different people that have participated, from Pat to Susan Stone to Ethan Nelson, and others who are willing to contribute plants from their own gardens in the next couple of weeks, just to get them planted into this site. We've talked about gateways. Tim has designed a really special Da Vinci bridge that we might use, or there are something else that we would put in there to create a little gateway. And none of these things would stand in the way of any future development. They're all around the perimeter of the site. As a matter of fact, we have a little plan that's kind of at work right now. Along the stockade fence in the back, we've got some little planting areas that have shade plants. Derek Larson, who's going to be here tonight, is going to pull out, he's got pots of hostas we're putting here. The site swales down to a center point where there'll be a small teaching rain garden, some other planting areas. We've got 4 really beautiful trees from Carl Phelps out on Miller Hill that are sitting there waiting for us to pick them up. Tim Shields out at Virgil and Constance has 2 really nice red delicious apple trees that he's going to give us for less than the price that they're at right now. Both of them for the price of one. And then he'll throw in some bags of peat moss. We've got a place for sunflowers. Ethan Nelson's going to bring the seeds in there. We've got some stone blocks that, I don't know if you guys just want to talk about that, but Wyatt Waterman, who's here, has been really helpful. Those things, they're somewhere between 250, 300 pounds a piece. And we've got a number of those set here now, and we're trying to create a little front edge. Michael, the guy next door who's the chef, is also has plans for us that he would be willing to put in and tend an herb garden here that could be used for teaching and maybe provide plants, herbs for some of the places in town. So you can see this is beginning to develop. We're leaving this portion of asphalt that's still here from the old driveway that'll be an accessible route for people in wheelchairs like Takari Schumann and others to come here and come into the park. And then the rest of it is just left open right now. There's an old tap in the street and a water line into a dead-end point that we want to see if we can't, I think Bernie was going to try to get over the counter, see if we can't put a yard hydrant or something in there so that we can water these trees. Absent that, we may try to make a relationship with the house next door to get a hose. There's already a man I talked to just a couple days ago who's a retired anesthesiologist who's going to be living in Brandon, who will come over and water the trees twice a week. We got to fill these 20-gallon bags on each tree. The network of people pulling together to make this happen is really interesting. So we're just really happy to have this progressive as kind of an example of how this can work. And so,
not to interrupt, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention too that Courtney Sachs donated a number of plants and a couple of shrubs to us.
that's right, yeah, Courtney, for all that she's been
Dear, dear
through.
my heart, bad timing for her, but she's
Right.
taking the community.
Thank you, that's important, because there's a number of people from the community that are pulling together. There's a mother, or two mothers and their daughters at the Virgil and Constance's place that want to come down and help plant. And there's other kids we're working with to help plant, or adults that would like to come and bring this site alive. So quickly, next steps. Angela Lynn has been very gracious to talk to us about the nature of Brandon and the future of it. If you've seen the little teaser that he posted when he met David Roberts at the field hockey game at OV, they went down here and walked this site and took a picture of that. And David Roberts and Stephen Jupiter have been very open to this idea of creating a river walk at the base of this thing. You can't build there anyway. But Angelo has helped to roll this out into the reporter, and we're getting some public awareness built. We're also learning from other towns. Manchester has an amazing river walk system. They created a group that we're sort of modeling our Greenways group after. They have some legal issues and money issues that they've all resolved through that group and created these very strong plans for their river walk in Manchester. Bristol Trails network is really pretty powerful. There's a person that Melly knows who's yelling at people every month to get some stuff done here. The Newport Trails have some help through Blue Cross Blue Shield. And Trailer on Middlebury has 17 different miles of walks that are sponsored by different people in the community. So these are models that we'd like to carry on for Brandon. And if you notice, there are some posters downtown of the then and now Brandon that everybody stops at. I watched an Indian man teaching his son about some things the other day when your family was here visiting Brandon. So these are just some of the things we'd like to move forward with. And we can't do this alone or even just with a small group. So we have some questions for you just to think about. Would the select board authorize the town to participate in this kind of effort, a joint funding effort with the Downtown Brandon Alliance and the Chamber to maybe create a Welcome to Brandon mural at the flower shop? There's a number, it's about $35 a square foot. We'd have a professional create a centerpiece to this, and then the rest would be volunteer paintings, but we might have $3,000 to $5,000 that would need to be amassed for that. And there are other funds we could probably look at from the Shirley Farr Trust, I suppose, or the CERT Foundation, which you just read that they just issued a whole bunch of money to people when we started their next round again. So, but if we could build a partnership like we've done with the DBA and the Chamber of the Town for other things, this would be one of the opportunities to do that. The water source at 17 Franklin, if there was some creative way we could get that to happen, that would be really important to the plantings this fall. These art initiatives that Ally talked about, or Kevin Thornton, that are becoming not just public art per se, but they're community builder, educational, teaching opportunities for the town. And then ideally, if you look back at the history of Brandon, the Civil War monument, it was a huge deal. I think they spent something like 2/3 of that year's annual budget to build that sucker. The brothers came down from Barry to carve it. But the biggest debate in the town was where to locate it, by the Congo Church or where it is. And the powers that be went out to where it is. But we would love to create another durable monument to Thomas Davenport. It brings the past forward into the present about electric mobility, and then talk about ways if we have Solar Fest here or an electric vehicle thing, Brandon becomes more important than just the cornhole capital. Those are the kind of things we'd like you to think about, and we really appreciate your time to let us present this to you tonight. So, thank you.
Any board comment, public comment? I have, oh, yeah.
I think we have to recognize Robert too. He's done a tremendous amount of work since he's been in this village here. He's tireless. So thank you, Robert.
Full disclosure, Bertie Carr and I share the same birthday.
Aries. But also the town. I know Dave and Bill have both been super supportive of all the efforts, trying to be involved and work things forward. So it's, as usual, it's just a great group effort and it's working. So congratulations to the board for being part of that.
About the water thing at the little park for a little while, that probably wants to go through the fire district.
I spoke with Ray today.
That's clarified.
I got hold of him this morning.
Right.
Robert.
Bertie's been pushing that one, so.
He's gonna look into it, see what's going on. He said there was a pipe still left from the curb stop over there that they used for a while when they were taking it down. He's not sure what happened with that. He's gonna talk to Kirk.
And we have a relationship with neighbors on either side, and a couple hundred feet of hose, or even all the way back to the Flynn's house. We're gonna get those plants watered one way or the other, even if it's a simple temporary thing, just for a month, and then next year we need to have more serious water.
I wonder, do you guys know, do you folks know, I seem to remember in Bellows Falls, they had a very similar mural, and they had a little bit of trouble with billboarding rules. Do you know what I'm talking about when you come off 91?
Yeah.
At the exit, it's like, go shop in Bellows Falls. I seem to remember some articles about, there was a little bit of grief. It was not art, it was an advertisement kind of thing. Do you know how that resolved?
Yeah, I don't, but I know that there's a similar issue with Liza's sunflowers on the building here. I think if it's art, it's one thing. If it's come shop in Bellows Fall, that's an advertisement.
Yeah,
If
we
it's
were
just,
talking.
if it's just art, I think it.
We ran this by Jeff Biasucci too, and talked to him about it, like the flower shop mural is not a sign per se, and he's already said he would allow that to be. But we have to be careful that we're not sort of.
I don't think it was a local violation, I think it was like a state billboard situation, do you know what I mean?
I think as long as it's like shop, it's not an advertisement, it was just art. But I guess in the shop in is probably what made it an advertisement versus
I guess I'm just saying, I hope that we're careful that we don't do something that we really fall in love with and then find out that it's a foul of an important statewide standard.
Beautiful, that's a good
Yes.
point. It would be a good thing for you guys to look into it, because we really did actually go around, rounds with V-Trans on our Purple Heart Town signs. So you might want to check with the state to see what's allowed for access on or something like that.
Also, I think it's on a private building too. You can do whatever you want on a private building.
No, it's a sign. That's why we're using Captain Wiegers and Will Casaconda, who are doing all the major murals in Brooklyn and Burlington. And they've been through this mill way more times than we have, so we wouldn't do anything to
I think that, as I recall reading about it, I think the determinative factor was the presence of words, actually. I really do.
Yeah.
Any words.
We can say welcome to Randolph. There's a big wall that's got some stuff on it. You can, or like greetings from Brandon, I think is okay, where it's a photo opportunity or just a, welcome sign. But we'll check it out. That's a good point.
Others, I see public comment, Sue Gage?
Well, I just was reading that article you were just talking about, and they did, a state board ruled that was not proper, but then the legislature passed a measure that exempted murals and ones like it, hand-painted signs that urge drivers to visit a designated downtown from the law. So I believe that.
Another reason to have a designated downtown.
Yeah.
There you go.
That and most people. Other comment, public comment? Bill Moore?
Yeah, definitely the thing with the mural, that I think it'd be acceptable, just leave it in there. Should have to check with Vermont Arts Council, and ask them for guidance, because I know that they've looked at, get the fish on the wall in Bethel. I mean, there's all kinds of projects. I mean, if they're putting them up Rutland, they're certainly knocking down here. And like everything else, these are amazing projects, and the vision and the work, you know, the hard work that the DVA has put into their almost weekly meetings for a couple years to get to this point. And I think that there's certainly some funding out there, public and private, that can make this happen. It's getting a number attached to all those things and having solid plans before asking for the money is, I think, the biggest thing that needs to happen, the greatest thing. So making sure we have landowner permissions before we put up a mural. Like, we got an opportunity for a mural. Now we need to know exactly what that number is going to be, so then we can say, I can write a VORAC grant for that, or we can go after, you know, we can ask the trustees of public funds for money, or we can go and ask Walter Surf Fund for $4,000 or $5,000. I mean, I think that there's plenty of money to make all these things happen, but having that solid plan and having a concrete ask of what exactly that money is going to be and what it's going to do is what's going to allow for the town, for public and private organizations to support these efforts. And that's the next vital, important step that needs to happen for all these things to happen.
Exactly. Thank you, Bill Moore's beard.
I think
Public comment, Robert?
Just a quick one. I mean, that's why we're here, is to build awareness about this, that we've been doing it. And then to two is to just ask that you join with us to help promote this for the town in all of its aspects, for the community building, for the educational stuff, for anything, economic development especially, I think will be helpful out of this. So, and then we will pursue specific projects, kind of like you're doing with ARPA money. If you can help us direct which ones are appropriate or important, we'd be happy to support.
So the timing is very opportune, because next month, probably next meeting, we'll end up setting the budget workshop dates for November and December. So I think if DBA through Bill, like Bill's department is usually where the DBA allotment appears. You know, if there's a collaboration there that can happen before the budget workshops happen, so that there's like a definite number attached to the identified projects, that would help in the planning bit.
It's perfect timing.
Yeah, very good timing.
Thank you.
I do think that any Davenport monument ought to include Mrs. Davenport, speaking as a man with 3 daughters, and a wife and a mother-in-law and 2 elderly hens.
And he
Because
used
she
her,
was key to the whole thing, right?
and he used her bridal gown for parts of the morning. Right?
Well, we won't have Mr. Thornton here to get involved like he did in the school board, but we'll let that one sit for a minute. I appreciate it.
Sorry.
We'll bring that
Further
up.
comment? Further comment? All right, thank you all genuinely for the presentation. We have number 10, to appoint a deputy health officer. Mr. Atherton's agreed to continue service in absence of other interests. Sorry, Dave, is there a motion from the
I
board?
make the motion to appoint Dave as deputy health officer.
I'll second.
If someone else wants it, they can take it right now.
Is anyone interested in being appointed deputy health officer?
What's it pay?
What's it pay?
Hey,
Same as it
About
pays
as much
when you were.
money as you can just have for the
It's a volunteer position, Brandon runs on volunteers, Vermont runs on volunteers. And Tom Kilpack is our regular health officer, so this is a kind of role for that. Other public comment, deputy health officer appointment? Any discussion from the board? None heard, ready to vote. All in favor of appointing David Atherton as deputy health officer, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it. If conversations could move to the lobby, just so we could finish up some board work, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. Item 11, request for use of local option tax funds. This came from the town treasurer. She's here. Sue, do you want to say anything to us about the local option tax request you have?
Well, I think it's relatively clear, but I think people get confused, and I just wanted to explain that there's actually 2 forms. One of them you actually approved on August 13th, but you never signed the form. I just like to have because it helps me to keep track,
Why
so.
would you not have signed it?
Or if you did, it disappeared, it was never found anyway in the package. So this is just a repeat of that. But then when we got into doing the audit and really going through things in detail, I just found an error with some old, it's actually an old 7.5 funds that the state occasionally comes back and says, oh, wait, we reallocated, we need to allocate things differently, so we ended up with another amount. And that's what the second one is on August 30th. And basically, it was actually more than that, it was about 30,000, but we had other undesignated funds that in that Fund 46 that I combined together, so we only need that much from local office tax for kind of a nice clean end of the year for Fund 46. And 76.
Thank you for that background, appreciate that.
Hopefully it's-
Pleasure of the board on the request to use local option tax funds in the amount of $11,114.69 to segment 6 match.
I thought we already did the final analysis.
Well, that was what I was explaining, so we did. That was the 11,000, but then Jackie realized, the state came back and said, oh, we've got this money to straighten out, basically, which happened, everyone's going on, and Dave knows more.
There's a little more to that too. Construction's done. There's still gonna be some engineering costs for project closeout. So we're still doing, like, we've got as-bills we're doing for the storm boxes, those need to be certified. So there's still gonna be some closeout money here, but construction's done.
I just like, it really is helpful for me, because I'm accounting for these funds on an annual basis, at the end of the year to tie it out. So that's why I'd like to have the little option fund, so that by the end of the year numbers tie up to zero.
So what would the other option be? The other option would be to pay it out of like some existing cash and then later to have a local option?
Well, no, it just would be a negative balance for a while until we decide to do it.
Sure, this is kind of what we're holding on to it for, so I mean, we're,
Well, I'm not suggesting.
I'm just saying that out there, that like, we're wrapping it up, and we made balance and change order for construction, but we are still going to have some closeout costs, so, not much, I mean, it's not going to be much at all, but.
So we're expecting another one after this? Yeah, something small.
I mean, we've got like 3 things left that engineers need to work on, and, they don't work for $15 an hour, so. There will be a couple things here and there, but nothing.
We'll do it again.
Nothing major.
I'll make a motion to approve the $11,114.69.
I'll second that.
Motion from Mr. Wyman, second from Mr. Markowski. Further discussion? Public input? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you too. This is also related to,
Do you want to leave that here for us to sign?
No, it's fair.
Oh, okay.
You got both of them, right? Yeah.
item 12 is an amendment to the wastewater loan agreement. Does this come from Sue or Dave? Can you introduce?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's the final design amendment for the wastewater treatment plant. So you know how we do everything in phases. So this is, if you look actually on page, I should have memorized that number. Well, it's actually doesn't have a page number, but it's called Exhibit A,
Yeah.
and it's probably 1, 2, 3, 6 pages in. There's one amendment to the final design of wastewater treatment facility refurbishment and upgrade. Also collects the step 1 funds.
Well, to me, the key thing is the chart on Exhibit C, which is that they're forgiving $151,000 in principal on the first payment.
Yeah, I like that part.
That's nice. And that there's 0 interest and 0 administrative fees for the whole life of the loan.
Right.
I mean, this is pretty reasonable terms. Anything else to be said on it? Any discussion, any questions?
Do we need to pass this?
Yeah. How about a motion?
I make a motion to pass the amendment to the wastewater loan agreement.
Motion and a second to sign the loan agreement amendment. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. You guys have it. Item 13A, the warrant. general fund.
Make a motion to approve the general fund warrant for $24,252.29. Second.
Motion from Mr. Coolidge and a second from Mr. Wyman. Any questions on any of the bills? All in favor of approval of the warrant, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. You guys have it. So at this time, which time is 9:10, broke the rule of no good decisions after 9 o'clock. So the board will recess, and the board will then have a Board of Liquor Commissioners meeting, and then the board will come back and do an executive session, and then return to public session and adjourn.